Full. 3, 2, 1. Well, it says we're live in Riverside. I don't know if we're live anywhere else though. LinkedIn's happening. YouTube's doing it. It's just, I don't know, we're live on YouTube for once as well. Welcome along. Duncan says it's 3:20 p.m. in the chat. Duncan, nice to have you with us again. It has been a busy week at Canny. Very busy. I feel like I say that. That's going to be the opening line to every podcast we ever have. It's been busy here at Canny. It's been busy here at Canny. God, it's been a busy week at Canny. Funny, well, not funny, boring story about Amazon clicking ads before we kick things off. This week, scrolling through Amazon, as you do. No, scrolling through Facebook, sorry, as you do, because I'm old, I still use Facebook. Amazon are advertising things, and I accidentally clicked one of the ads. It was a white marble hand, like for holding pens. It's an absolute trash item. But now it keeps advertising as random body parts to buy on Amazon to hold my pens in, which, yeah, that's not great use of ads. We have people here on LinkedIn. We have people here on YouTube. We do have people in the Riverside studio. I think that is more than enough people to kick off. But what I should do before we kick off is absolutely load up the slides, because if we don't do that, this is going to be a rubbish episode of the podcast. So here we are. This is episode 2 of Demand Better Marketing. I'm Tony Hardy, founder and co-founder and director. That's what I am. I will remember these things one day. I am the co-founder and director of Canny Creative. This is episode 2. Last week's episode of the podcast is now available on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, all of the good stuff. Everywhere you would normally listen to your podcast, you can get we're there. The video is up on YouTube. There's clips on TikTok. We've been more socially active in the last week than we've probably been for about 5 years. So check it out. Subscribe everywhere. You know the drill. I'm not going to go on. Remember, leave questions in the chat. I can see them. Chris, my host, can see things. We can respond to things. On this episode of Demand Better Marketing, we're going to be talking about the basics of brand strategy. This was a poll that we put out on LinkedIn. We gave people options, vote on what they want to vote on to see what we're going to talk about. And brand strategy was the first thing that came out on top. I thought for a while it was going to be marketing tools. Brand strategy came out on top. Marketing tools will be next week's episode. But it's simple. It's the basics of brand strategy. So if you work in branding, if you work in marketing, you're going to know a lot of this stuff. But we're going to cover it off, and then maybe later, when we get further down the line with these, we'll deep dive into some of the topics. But for now, let's dive in. First of all, what's the difference between branding and brand strategy? I think there's this big thing around, we've got our branding sorted, or, oh, we need branding. And what people mean by that is our visual brand, our brand identity. When people typically say branding, that's what they mean. They mean the colors, the logo, the font, the typography, patterns they use, the photos they use. But you need to step back from that. There's a whole lot more to a brand than just the visuals. And I think this is where people kind of come unstuck. Brand strategy plays a massive role. It's the underpinning foundation in a brand. It's super, super useful. You need this kind of building block to lay the visuals on top of. Without that, you don't have any idea. I mean, you'll have ideas, but you don't have a solid grasp on who you're targeting, who your competitors are, what the advantage you're offering is. It's really, really important to get all of those thoughts crystallized down on paper in a document so you can understand that before trying to even design or think about anything design related. So there's a great quote from Brad McGinty of the CRO of 15.5, and he said, brand is a long-term sustainable competitive advantage that any business can create that is really hard to unseat. Whereas somebody else can copy your features, somebody else can copy your sales model. These other things are all short-term. Brand is a long-term, durable, sustainable, and competitive advantage. And that goes way, way beyond your identity. A great quote from Brad. And I mean, the next slide here is the difference between brand identity and brand strategy. We've just covered that off, so we're going to literally skip on by. Do you need a brand strategy? In short, yes. Like, we design brands day in, day out here at Canny. Everything that we design goes through the brand strategy process. No branding at all should happen without a strategy in place. Winging it might scrape you away on The Apprentice, but in the real world, you can't afford not to have that strategy, have the plan in place. And for SMEs, startups, even larger, medium companies, small enterprises, a brand strategy is essential to get the best start possible. And sometimes your strategy will come into play when you're creating the brand. Sometimes it'll be when you're rebranding. You use it for everything: marketing campaigns, visual cues, even hiring strategy. There's a whole load. Let's dive into the brand strategy and let's kick it off. Brand strategy is part of your larger strategic plan. You've got business strategy and brand strategy. It gives you that foundation to build upon, but it presents itself as an organized document that people, directors, board members, C-suite, anyone in the team can read and understand. It's important to strategize to materialize results. You have to think long and hard about brand. Some people going gung ho. I'm designing my logo. We want you to design this fantastic website. But honestly, you need to put a pin in the ground. This is what we're going after. So how do you create a brand strategy? Well, most people know what they want to achieve already. They just don't know how to get it down on paper. If that's you, we do have a free download. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, head over to the website, find the download. If you're watching it back on YouTube, we will put a comment in the links below. But the easiest way to think of your brand strategy is thinking of who, where, what, why, and how. That's kind of the 5 categories we break things down into. So let's dive into who. Who are you trying to engage with your branding? First of all, a word from our sponsors. No, a drink break. Doing this live is much harder than doing pre-recorded video. I'm just putting that out there. Team, if we ever want to go back to pre-recorded video, we can. Who are we trying to engage? Your customer personas. This is probably the most hammered on term in all of marketing. Whether you call it ICP, ideal customer profile, ideal customer persona, customer avatars, personas, targets, whatever you call them, you've probably heard this term before, but it's important as hell that you get them down. The problem with the way people do personas, and I do worry I'm going to go off on a tangent on just this one. The problem with the way people handle personas right now is they focus on kind of the like really miniature details, like, oh, his name is Eric and he drives a Range Rover. Okay, cool. But that doesn't really, it helps a little, but it's not super interesting. Like, okay, so Eric likes Range Rovers. What are we going to do with that when it comes to creating a brand strategy? Not a hell of a lot. There are 3 categories three categories you definitely want to think about when it comes to creating personas. I'm not big on like give them a photo, give them a name. A name's okay, but they do have to reflect a real person or someone that you would like to do business with. But downloading a stock photo is probably not going to help too much. It's fine, but demographics. So age, name, gender, ethnicity, this sort of thing builds up a bit of a profile of who they are. Geographics, where do they live? What sort of climate is it? Are they in a city? Are they in the countryside? What's the population? These sorts of things can help you think about the sort of ads they're useful, the sort of ads they're already used to, the kind of ways they travel around. Like if they're in a large metropolis type city like New York, London, they're going to see things on the tube. They might become blind to seeing things on the tube. This sort of information is quite useful to have. But the most important element in a customer persona for me is all about the psychographics, the values, the beliefs. What problems are they trying to solve? What are their reward mechanisms? What do they struggle with in day-to-day life? These are the things in a persona document that really, really help them sing. You can do a lot with that information. So to get these down, think about your customers that you're currently working with. Think about your top 3 to 5, kind of write them down and there's another useful template on Canny's site. You can pick that up, but really you should be able to, nice, concise A4 sheet. Who are the customers we want to go to? Why, when? There might be 3 to 4. There might be, try not to do more than 5. It can be really confusing and you can really dilute your message. But yeah, that's customer personas in a nutshell. I will not go as deep on any other subject because honestly, the customer persona thing could have become an episode on its own real easy. Next up in the who section, competitor research. Who are we competing against? What is their value prop against our value prop? This is really easily solved for the matrix type grid, you in one column, customers in another, you in one column, competitors in another column, row along the bottom. What's their H1 on their website? What is their USP? What are they asking people to do? Look at their collateral, rate it, score it. You could build quite a nice metrics grid system. What colors are they using? I know we're talking about strategy, but what tone of voice are they using? There's things like in there that you could easily dig out. Try and align 4, 5, 6 different competitors, local, national, international, along the page, list them out. That's your competitor research. Fairly straightforward, but you can use that data later on. If everyone else in the industry uses a color blue, then you might want to consider blue. You might want to consider using red and flying in their face. There's ways to use that data. Where does your brand sit compared to others in the market? Brand positioning is the first thing and probably only thing in this category. Brand positioning, where do you sit? This is something that I struggled with to get my head around at the start of my branding journey. Before my degree, did not understand this at all, how to position a brand. But the easiest way to explain it is using beans. So Heinz beans are the beans that everyone in Britain loves. I'm not a big fan. I like Branson beans. Heinz beans are the top of the range, quality British bean. But then the other side of the market, you've got smart price beans or not low quality, but supermarket basic range beans. And it's kind of like a sliding scale. Okay, so are we Heinz? Are we these guys? Are we Branston right in the middle? Are we creating the world's most expensive tinned beans? Are we going above and beyond Heinz? Heinz did this whole campaign around Heinz means beans, and that was a massive brand positioning exercise in trying to position them as the market leader. It's a bit difficult, but try and think if you're positioning as a sliding scale, where do you sit between A and B, or do you sit between them at all? It is about where you fit into the market. What? Another glass of water. Okay, so what does your brand do and why do they do it? Your brand story. Your brand story needs to be gripping. People love stories. We're literally driven by stories, books, podcasts, videos, live shows like this, films. People love stories. So if your business or brand doesn't have a story, you're kind of dead in the water before you've even started. So ask yourself, have I shown enough of my personality, enough of the story, enough of our reason to exist? Have we demonstrated that on our website? Are we showing it through collateral? Are we getting buy-in? Creating a brand story is a must. Typically, when we provide brand strategy documents with our clients, brand stories maybe are a PowerPoint slide or two written out. This is the story. This is why we're doing what we're doing and how we're getting to where we're going. Brand values. Brand values are possibly the biggest linchpin for me in a brand strategy and easily the thing within Canny's brand strategy that we've used the most. So a brand value, what is it? It's something that matters to you on a much, much deeper level. Try to avoid cliches like honesty. Honesty is a brand value. Oh my God. Like, who's not honest? Like, you're not putting out a brand value saying, well, we're dishonest. Like, honesty and integrity and transparency are pretty much table stakes. Like, Simon Sinek, the guy that wrote Start With Why, he had a really, really good talk about brand values. And he's like, make them super actionable, like, so people know what they're up against. One word values probably aren't going to cut it. Canny's brand values are, and I am looking down, I know all these, they spell the word smash. We set up for success. We make relationships matter. Always over communicate. We sweat the small stuff and we have serious fun. They're actionable. There's reason and meaning tied to each of them. And what you can do with values is they give you something to measure against. Like, does our brand reflect those things? Right now, we're having a big discussion internally about whether Canny's brand actually reflects having serious fun. It's probably too serious and not fun enough. When you're hiring, you can explain these things, get people engaged in the interview process. Like, what does this mean to you? And if they align with what you align with, it kind of makes sense. And that having a brand values noted down, putting them on the wall is a bit cheesy, to be honest. We haven't got them up on the wall. They are on our website. Our team know what they mean. We do use them in performance reviews and hiring process, but values are really, really fundamental inside of a brand strategy. Why? Why does your business exist in the first place? This is a brand mission. On the 10KSB Goldman Sachs course, they call this brand purpose. Personally, I think the word purpose is super wishy-washy. It's not a word that I don't love. Brand purpose, the purpose for existing. Some people's purpose is money. It just is what it is. I like mission, brand mission, because it sounds, in the nicest way, it sounds like aggressive. You're going out to get something. You're setting out on a mission to accomplish something. Your mission statement should talk about who you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. It's there to talk about where you want to be. What is the vision of the brand, and what can you do within the world? It's a definition of the purpose of your brand and how you plan to fulfill your objectives and customer needs. How are you going to get your brand in front of your customers? Brand vision, where you want to be, where you want the brand to go long term, or what can your brand change in the long term and how. So separate to the mission, the vision is the longer overarching goal. Within the world, we want to affect this many companies. If you're a clean water supply company, we want to affect this many communities by this date. That's the vision, and that's how you're going to do it. We're going to do that by delivering recyclable bottled water to the deepest, darkest parts of Africa. That's a fair enough brand vision. You've got to refine the words and probably, wordsmith that up better than I can articulate it. But how, the brand vision is a how and a what you're going to do. So brand touch points, they are the last part. No, they are not the last part. There's a lot of parts in the how when it comes to brand strategy. Brand touch points or your mission statement come together, and your touch points, like, I always think of examples of brand touch points where I'm thinking about a hotel. So when you interact with a hotel before booking.com, there were so many different brand touch points. First of all, you searched for them on Google, or you looked for them in a magazine or a newspaper. Yeah, I'm that old. I used to look for hotels in newspapers. You would interact with that advert. Then you would call them up and try and secure a booking. When you are on the phone, you might hear some hold music. Then it's how the receptionist greets you. Then it's the booking process. That's 5 touch points before you've even made a booking or started anything with the brand. Then on the day you get to the hotel, you get to the car park, is there someone there waiting to take your bags, waiting to take your car? You get into the reception, there's music. Is it the same hold music? You meet the receptionist. Does he say the same thing as he did on the telephone? These are all little touch points you get to your room. Is there chocolate on the pillow? What does the menu look like? All of these little touch points. In the context of a hotel, it's really easy. A design agency, what does their email funnel look like? What does their website look like? How do all of these little tiny bits piece together to form a bigger part? In a strategy document, your touch points might be just listed out, bullet points, brainstorm, mind map, whatever we call it these days. Visualize your world as a brand and kind of get into everything we need to consider as a company. Messaging and tone of voice. So how are you communicating your message and what makes you unique? I'm a massive fan of a table, a literal do's and don'ts. Like at Canny, we allow swearing, honestly, because if we didn't, I'm going to fail anyway. So swearing and casuality in a relaxed tone of voice is what we go with. I could not sit here and talk very properly on the podcast. That would not work. I would sound, and I did just sound like a fucking idiot. So tone of voice is super, super important. You can set real guidelines around this. Like in our blog post, we reference pop culture all the time. If I write a blog post, I'll be talking about Game of Thrones, House of Dragon, Suits. There'll be some reference to some Netflix or HBO show in there. But if you're in the finance industry, that's probably going to be, although now I say that, if you're in the finance industry and you start talking about how Game of Thrones and finance work together, that's probably one of the most unique angles that you could take in the finance industry. So that will probably work a treat. But you know what I mean? It's kind of not the norm. Tone of voice guidelines are really important. So you make sure you're communicating a consistent message with consistent language over and over again. Canny recently went through an exercise. We've got a blog style guide, which shows people how to write blogs, ways we think about different types of language. And then Amy, our content writer, that's totally downplayed Amy, our content strategist, went through and kind of wrote a really in-depth tone of voice guideline. These are the sorts of things we say. These are the sorts of things we don't say. And it's that simple. Give examples, give real life reasons, and explain it all. And then finally, everyone's favorite when it comes to the branding is the brand identity. How does your brand look visually? How is it represented? This is your logos, your color, your font choice, your website, all of your marketing collateral, all of your touch points. So your brand, again, brand strategy is the foundation. Touch points sit in the brand strategy, but then you need to use the touch points from within the brand strategy to create the brand identity. You know, as the hotel, there's going to be a menu, there's going to be an online website, a booking experience, there's going to be collateral that you need. These sorts of things combined with your messaging and tone of voice and really help build a well-rounded brand identity. It all ties back into your brand strategy. So how do you develop a successful brand? Brand strategy ultimately leads to creating a brand that's known, liked, and trusted. So align the brand strategy with your overall business strategy. That's point one. They need to work harmoniously together or you're getting nowhere. Number two, identify and research your target market effectively. One of the biggest elements in the brand strategy is that target market. Without customers, you're dead. Create a brand strategy and stick with it. Everything you do for the next 5, 10, 15 years is going to fall from the brand strategy. So create it, stick to it religiously. Design a full brand identity, not just a logo. There's a lot more to brand identity design than logos. 5, I'm doing these numbers and I worry I'm going to run out of fingers. 5, develop your website to ensure that the brand strategy you've created and the brand identity runs through and is a consistent experience. 6, create a content marketing strategy based off the brand strategy and the brand identity. Kind of whatever you're doing in the brand strategy needs to echo through your content and your marketing strategy too. And finally, build out your marketing materials. These 7 things work together in conjunction with the brand strategy and the business strategy to give you something that you could really take and run with for miles and miles. And then one thing to pick up on though is a brand strategy will probably not change too often. If you start finding areas of the brand strategy changing, like customer personas changing, we're actually using a different tone of voice. At some point, you'll have ended up tweaking the strategy enough to look and go, hang on, the visual or the website is totally disconnected from the strategy now. And this is a part in time where rebrands tend to happen. Like you start messing with that brand strategy enough and probably need to evolve the look and feel of the brand too. So how do we make brand strategy together? I know there's only 3 points here because we wrote them down before. 1, make it strategic. Winging a brand strategy is only going to lead to problems much, much further down the line. 2, make it complete. Go through the documents provided. Listen to this podcast again. A good brand strategy is a complete brand strategy. Do not miss parts out. It won't work. And 3, make it accessible within the organization. Discuss it, circulate it. Don't do it in a bubble. Talk about what you are as a brand, but ideally have it done before you grow and grow and grow. Canny are a 10-person company. We've got ours nailed down. Do it before the 10-person mark, but make your strategy accessible to as many people as possible. That's it. That's this episode of Demand Better Marketing in a nutshell. We are going to do some Q&A. There has been a question or two. I can't see the chat, so I am going to just quickly exit this. There's no questions in the chat, but there are 7 people, so we've gained a few along the ride. So welcome to the additional people in the Riverside stream. The Q&As that we've had submitted via email, and I think one came via TikTok. So well done, TikTokers. How often can I change my brand strategy? I feel like we covered that off before. You can change it as often as you want, but you're going to be in for an expensive ride when all the visuals need to change and the website needs to keep changing. Don't try and set, not forget, but set and stick to until you reach to a natural inflection point or growth point in the business. Otherwise, you're going to be spending and wasting a whole lot of money on design work. Sorry, excuse me. Is the brand identity included in the brand strategy document? Typically, when Canny give our clients our brand guidelines, we would include parts of the brand strategy. We don't put all of the wording in, that would be a monstrosity. But the kind of the audience goes in there, the tone of voice goes in there, kind of key decisions from the strategy marry up with the key decisions from the visuals. Pretty straightforward. Yes, to a degree it goes together, but there is normally a fuller brand strategy document to accompany that. What is important about a brand story in a brand strategy? Like I said before, people love stories. It has to be compelling. And also, here's a copywriting or story tip that I heard the other day. When you write a story, don't start here and journey to here. Start your brand story here, near the end, and then double back. It makes it much more interesting. It's much more punchy that way. So get close to the end goal and rewind time, kind of like a flashback in a movie, and that works out nicely. That's a nice little formula for building a brand story. And then who should write a brand strategy document? That as the owner, the founder of a creative brand and marketing agency, whatever the hell we want to call kind of creative these days, personally, I think it should be an agency or an outside source. I think getting that external consultative type view on the business is always massively helpful. You could do it internally with your team, then run it by an agency. That would work too. I don't think it should be written in isolation. That's the one thing I would say. There's kind of merit in having many more voices to push the boundaries, play devil's advocate. So don't write it in isolation, but write it with trusted advisors, companions, agencies. That's how I would handle it. That's it. We have a new sign-off phrase, so we're going to test it out and see how it goes. That's been Demand Better Marketing. This is, totally lost my train of thought. This is the sign-off bit. Remember, don't settle for less. Demand better marketing. Like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube video. Listen to the podcast. Subscribe on Spotify and iTunes. If that list gets any longer, it's going to be more meaty than the content of the podcast itself. Remember, tune in again next Wednesday at 4 o'clock. With you in the meantime.